Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, which means some sort of geek pop culture thing. And yes, we're going to talk about why professional Dungeons and Dragons was, in my opinion, a mistake. But first, I have to show off my new fucking awesome 3-Possum Moon shirt. Holy shit. A client found this for me. I mentioned to him that I've been trying to find, cause I'm forgetting the character's name now on Peacemaker, the tech guy. He wore this, and I'm like, I fucking love that shirt, cause I love possums. And I couldn't find like the exact design. This is the closest I could get to what he was wearing, but like, fuck, it's so awesome. And yeah, it's not at all cool, but that's the whole point. And that's how it ties into professional Dungeons and Dragons are a series of words that really shouldn't be tied together. And yes, this is inspired by the fact that people are just dragging up the Satine Phoenix controversy again. And that's not even fair to call it that, because it was her and her husband, and it was at least, the allegations go back to 2022. She has apologized. People don't think it was a sincere apology. I don't want to get into that. But what struck me is the fact that the comments of the video bringing this whole thing back and dragging in other people who just want to be left alone, dragging in other people, the focus of the comments, a lot of it was about the fact that she did, I never know whether to call porn sex work, but like, you know what I mean? It was just, she's conventionally attractive and she did jobs that people think are a certain thing, and what that has to do with accusations, one could say, confirmed proof of bullying, abusive behavior, failure to pay, what that has to do with anything? Well, because we're now in Mean Girl world now. We're now in the world of the popular kids, and that's why professional D&D was a fucking mistake. The minute there's money to be made in something, the cool kids get it. And the minute the cool kids get it, we get this shit. And Stranger Things is also in my mind, because I was that kid that started playing 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s. When it was not cool. When it was the Satanic Panic. And nobody cool played D&D. At best, you got a guy like Eddie, who was sort of like evil cool. He was bad kid cool. So he listened to like heavy metal. And so he had like the demon shirts and everything like that tied into D&D. That was about as cool as you got. And that was still not like mainstream cool. That was edgy cool. And that was where D&D belonged. That is where D&D thrives, when it is a small group of you being absolute idiots because you're good friends, or if done properly, you will become good friends, because it's vulnerable and not meant for public consumption. It is an opportunity to be exceptionally silly. The minute that becomes a job, you get this ego-driven shit. And to me, it wrecks the purity of the whole experience. Now, plenty of other games, like card games, are professional when it's poker, right? Esports is an example of games that have a professional element. But again, there's a shit ton of exploitation in esports. We really need to do better recognizing that a lot of not just would-be players don't get paid, but analysts don't get paid, and marketers don't get paid, because even though there's a lot of money, broadly, there's a lot of money at the top, it isn't distributed, trickling down. There's not enough money for everyone to make enough. Because these things, gaming definitely pivoted to be marketed more to cool kids. Thanks, Xbox. Even Sega, before Xbox, Sega went for the whole, be cool, Nintendo's for kiddies sort of thing. But D&D, nah. D&D was never supposed to be for the cool kids. Let me do the help support this channel and get into it. I'm sure I'll take shit for this, so help support this channel, please. Please, if you want to become a monthly patron, great. If you want to help people by donating a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or like and subscribe to this channel for this content, because the algorithm doesn't like these things, and I don't just bash people. So, I'm not one of the cool kids, and I don't want to be one of the cool kids. I wear yellow fucking glasses because my eyes are shit, and I wear a fucking possum shirt, and I'm surrounded by Cthulhu and Slimer and another possum back there. And my goal is to be how they got back to their time in Star Trek 4 by slingshotting around the sun. That's what I want to be. Stupid, it doesn't work that way, but I want to be so uncool that I just slingshot around and end up in the future, because where it is cool, because I am not cool. I have never been cool. And fuck it, I don't want to be cool. Cool is a trap. Hot is a trap. If ladies out there, guys, if you think hot women are treated better, look at how conventionally attractive women are actually treated. They are commodified and just treated like a different type of shit, right? Nobody's treated well. Nobody's treated well in cool kid world, because it is a fucking blood sport. There is so little room at the top that one slip and you fall, right? That was the great thing about not being a cool kid. Your friends actually liked you instead of just using you for status, and that was amazing. And sure, yeah, you got beat up by bullies, or who were often also some of the cool kids. But still, you knew your friends were your friends. And getting back to that vulnerability aspect of D&D, that is what has been lost by the commercialism, the commodification of it. And I first saw the problems when the writer's strike happened and Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog became a thing. So Felicia Day became a thing. And then the Guild became a thing. And I couldn't go to a single convention without people either comparing me to Felicia Day or asking me what I thought about Felicia Day, and the idea that she took my spot, and she's an American, the spot was ever mine. I don't have papers to work down there, and I wouldn't participate in strike breaking anyway. So I would never be Felicia Day. I am not, I am not prepared to do what it takes to summit those heights, and I accept what comes with that. But my God, I don't want to participate in that shit. And that was part of the whole Joss Whedon toxicity thing. And hey, she's done fairly well for herself, but I can't live with it. I just can't. But that was when I'm like, this is not good. I already feel the Smurfette syndrome coming. And let's face it, they added Max to Stranger Things so that they didn't have 11 as a superpowered Smurfette. But yeah, when there's a relatively small number of women in a space, whether it be a hobby or a field, there is this sort of Smurfette Highlander thing. There can only be one. They force you into this weird competition. And then, of course, I was at E3 one year and she bumped 4 lines that I was in. And I missed my spot twice because of that. And I was sitting there going, professional D&D, cool kid D&D. It was a mistake. And don't get me wrong. I think things like the D&D movie are great. I think that the increase in fantasy is great. Things like Dungeon Meshi, fantastic. I like that people like things like The Legend of Vox Machina, or I forget the other one. I can't watch those shows because I see the seams too much. With Dungeon Meshi, I can see it just enough that it's fun, but it's not so obvious that it's taking me out of it. Because, like, what a really original take on your standard dungeon raiding party. Gamified dungeons, because a dungeon is not a cave network. A dungeon is a prison within a fortress, right? We've moved the goalpost even on the meaning of dungeons because of Dungeons and Dragons. They are cave networks most of the time, or they are catacombs. They are not actually dungeons. And this is the thing. When the source books are starting points for you and your friends to be silly assholes, and, the reason table drama gets so intense is because it's vulnerable, the shit you do. Because the first character you play is usually some perfected version of yourself, or working shit out somehow, right? So it's vulnerable. I mean, you see that in Stranger Things a lot. Like, those kids live their D&D campaigns to a degree that, borders on child endangerment. But it was the 80s, But, I mean, I did that when I was a kid. And I remember when I first played, they didn't have actual sorcerer classes back then. That's how old it was when I played D&D. It was pre that. So it was strictly just mages. But the 2 guys I was playing with said, you're going to be a sorceress because you're a girl, you can't be a wizard. I disagree. But anyway. And I guess they were trying to be polite by not calling me a witch. But I remember the first thing, because, mages have like 8 hit points when you start, or back then they did. And so the DM overstacked the first encounter. It was like the first monster we encountered was a will-o-wisp, which back then was a difficult monster to fight when you have 8 hit points. So one roll, I died, or I should have died. And I remember this kid to this day. He was, what was he, Czechoslovakian or something like that? His name is Jacek, I think. But he kind of looked at me and picked up the dice and rolled again. And that is the spirit of D&D. You help new people on board. And you're forgiven with certain mistakes. Because if you're a good DM, your party emerges, battered, bruised, but ultimately triumphant. That's a good campaign. Except for Ravenloft, which is designed to freaking test friendships, because it's you against the board. In that case, even the GM, because you're not supposed to call them dungeon masters anymore, because that apparently invokes slavery, even though the dungeons are actually catacombs or caves. They're not literal dungeons. Anyway, the game master isn't in charge of a Ravenloft campaign, and that's the significance of them playing Ravenloft in, when does the show end? 1989 or something like that. Anyway, Ravenloft is a great way to ruin friendships if you're not like tight, because it is so frustrating. So like, that was a little code for long-term players, but this shit doesn't exist anymore. Now vampires exist in this stuff to Fangyif, And it's actors doing improv theater under the guise of Dungeons and Dragons. And so now it's this ongoing sense of upward social comparisons where, once again, the people that this stuff appealed to back in my day, where it was ours and there was no upward social comparison. Everybody who played it was a loser just like us. You're a loser just like me. Thanks, Has Been Hotel. Now there's cool kids. And now, in order to really matter in the D&D space, you have to look hot, right? Well, at least for women. Guys, there's some standards. But let's face it, when you got Neil Newbin, the guy who plays Astarion very well, compared to dudes in shirts like mine, that's a different kind of attention. And I do notice there's a lot of abuse in these comment sections, even stuff that's fucking great, like some of the production values on this stuff. And I want to be clear, I don't begrudge a group that is just a bunch of guys who play D&D and record it and put it up there and it takes off. Awesome. But the minute we got into things like the open gaming license and, the owners of D&D over the years trying to maximize the cash grab. And so that's when we got stuff like, Critical Role branching off and doing their own thing. And then all the drama surrounding and, drama is downplaying some of the very serious allegations there. But the truth is that whenever there is money, you're going to get abuse and you're going to get corruption. And what I see in, the stuff that people are like, oh, stamp this out, refuse to work with them, is typical entertainment industry bullshit. And that doesn't make it right. But, the fact that people never let anything go in this space, that it becomes this, ironic mob with torches and pitchforks. They become this legion of undead. You have transgressed. You must pay. We come for your blood. Daywalker. It's all really not in the spirit of, first of all, Gary Gygax himself was a complicated, pretty flawed dude who, didn't intend for D&D to be what it was, and that's okay. What it ended up being was what it ended up being. But this is something where a guy had his home phone number in the game manuals. And of course, nothing's going to stay there the minute it's successful. I don't expect that. I'm bracing myself for when the Henry Cavill Warhammer 40K stuff comes out, because now Warhammer is the nerd shit, right? That if you admit you like Warhammer 40K, that is still not cool. It's more cool because we've had like the Amazon Prime show. But if you compare Owlcat's Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader game, which is fucking awesome, man. I'm on chapter 5 now. That game is bringing back all the love. Oh my God. It feels like Fallout 1 and 2 and Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and Icewind Dale. It feels like the glory days of isometric CRPGs. And again, there is a silliness to it that they just embrace. The characters are fucking terrifying, but they're goofy. I mean, the one I keep checking myself on is Heinrichs, because he's a fucking Inquisitor psycho biomancer, right? I did not say psycho, folks. Psyker. The equivalent of wizards in Warhammer 40K. But he can boil your blood, but the dude is so uptight. I just catch myself going, he's so cute, you know? And I'm like, this guy can kill you with a look. And I'm like, he's so adorable. You know, it's ridiculous, right? Like, all of the people in that show are, that IP are really fucking scary. It's a scary place. It's grimdark as fuck, you know? I did a whole men liking stuff about Warhammer 40K, but it's so over the top and goofy, and I'm bracing for because I mean, Warhammer 40K is a game world where the big macho dudes in power armor with the chain swords, right, are asexual. The big warrior dudes are asexual. Canonically, you just know there's gonna be gay space marine / the minute that series drops, right? And people are still freaking out about the female custodes, which there's no canonical reason why that can't happen. I'll spare the lore dump as to why. I've already been through that. But see, this is nerdy shit. This is still nerdy shit. This is still... I did a radio segment about the positive elements of gaming lately, and I joked off the top, like, how's your day been? It's like, oh, I pulled myself away from video games to do the segment, har, har, har. And, you know, at the end, the radio host goes, oh, what are you playing these days? And I'm like, Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader. And he goes, I have no idea what that is. Yes! This is my jam, right? Because the minute the cool kids get a hold of it, everything's gonna be about fucking sex the way Forgotten Realms has become. And that's why, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 was a mess of a game that was all about how you could fucking break it and what toxic sex you wanted to have. And that's what happens when cool kids get hold of shit. It's all oversexed and sex shaming at the same time. So they got all the dudes fucking each other every which way from sideways, but the women are just sluts. You know, that's what the cool kids do. And that is never going to change because cool is about hierarchy. The amazing thing about nerd shit, you know, Vampire the Masquerade is still... Vampire the Masquerade flirted, or World of Darkness flirted with going toxic in the LARP community. And it did. Like, World of Darkness LARP toxicity, holy fucking shit. You know, the SCA, fucking goddamn it. The minute anything hits a certain amount of scale and money starts exchanging hands, you get corruption and you get bad behavior. The only way things stay relatively contained, and I mean, every Warhammer 40K fan talks about Games Workshop's shitty business practices. But it does seem like they're starting to learn from it, which is interesting. But, you know, we'll all complain about the plastic crack and, you know, the queuing up to get books that are sold out in 5 seconds, but we're not doing that to each other. We're all in this sort of lateral space where all of us fans we're at the shit end of the stick, but we're all in it together. There's no hierarchy. The minute you get hierarchy, you get bullying and you get corruption and you get cheating and you get people taken advantage of. And I mean, I stopped GMing Dungeons and Dragons because of, well, the only way you play anymore, it's too hard to get people together for in-person game nights. People live too far apart. And fuck this winter, man, in Canada. It's too disruptive. And so everything's online. And the RPG communities get very, very big. And when they get big, you get drama. And I mean, God, it was, you know, when you're GM, you have to enforce rules, and then you're a bitch and you're abusive and people just go online and blast you. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I mean, it got so bad that this was actually a White Wolf game that I was a part of, not D&D. But one of the players worked for a major tech company. And he was pulling the information of a much younger female player who he was obsessed with and like using it to online stalk her. And I found out, I'm like, what the fuck, man? No. And I ended up being the bad guy on that one because it's whoever gets their story out first, right? It's whoever screams first. Then the other person, no matter what they say, is just, oh, that's what you're saying to get out of trouble. Because it's fucking mean girl bullshit when it's the popular crowd, right? And we just rewatched Heathers on my server. We watched Heathers and then Heathers the Musical. Heathers the Musical is fucking amazing, man, but watch the movie first. Heathers is it was one of those movies that told me who I was back in the day, because it really spoke to me. And it is the original high school is a fucking blood sport. And girls are horrible to each other, but guys can also be horrible too. Like it was this story about how everything about being a teenager was dangerous. And when I think about the only safe places in my late childhood going into adolescence, it was nerd shit. Like sitting in somebody's basement, it was like 4 guys and me playing Crystal Castles, right? Playing Dungeons and Dragons. These were spaces where I was the only girl, around a bunch of boys, and there was no sense of anything sexual. And sure, there might have been like romance content or something in the games, but at that point, before the damsel in distress was demonized, it was all about saving the princess and being the hero, and we started, warping that stuff because I was like, well, why do we have to save the princess all the time? Let's save the monster. And I have my sister to thank for that, because whenever we were playing like Thundercats or something like that, it was like, I'm going to be Lionel. I'm going to be Mumra. And my sister went, I want to be the princess. And we're like, there's no princess in Thundercats. You can be Chitara. Is she a princess? Yes. Okay. And like, I was like, my sister was a girly girl, right? But it was like, ugh. Could we get away from that for 5 minutes, please? This is a sandbox where we can be anything we want. Why do we keep putting ourselves into the same, 6 roles? We can be anything we want. So it's like, let's save the monster for a change, right? And damn, we had so much fun subverting tropes. And we were all just players. We were all just nerds. Back then, there was none of this get sex to prove your manhood. People didn't even think about that shit back then. Like 13-year-olds were not regularly giving blowjobs back then. That's a product of social expectations. That the fast track to adulthood and popularity is stick your dick in something or suck a dick. And that's come in to our fantasy. And we've lost the romance to popularity. And Alan Moore, of all people, cautioned about this with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's what that series is about. It's constantly like, if you lose the romance, if you lose the higher, lofty, idealistic, and some people say unrealistic, right? when it's about love instead of sex, when it's about heroism instead of power, when you lose that, all you get is James Bond boffing, the Bond girl of the film. And this was his example. She can have elf ears, she can be green, but it's still just trophy woman to show what a manly man you are. 'Cause congratulations, you had sex. That doesn't make you a man. And, being hot doesn't get you treated any better. Trust me. I played in that space. And yes, I never looked like, but I did okay. I was treated no better. And in fact, in a way, I was treated worse because people just assumed I was dumb and evil, because people just assume, oh, you look a certain way for work because it's your job. Well, you must be a narcissistic, manipulative bitch who's just out to screw everybody in any way you possibly can. What a slut. And this is the cool kid world. I reject the cool kid world. I chose to go into this space because, one, I legitimately love it. But two, I think there are amazing things about it. And I think that a lot of people misunderstand the noise. And there's no way to have Hollywood involvement in this stuff without the sleaze, because Hollywood is sleazy. And when all the nerd services were relocating to California, right, to LA, that's when it really started to change. And that was the time that I had to make a choice of, I remember I actually calculated it, that in order to make a move to LA worth it, I would have to make 4 times the money I make now. In part because, 20%, 10 to 20% goes to your manager, 15% goes to your agent, and then your publicist takes a few thousand a month as well. So, and you have to have all those things to function in LA. So yes, you can do a very successful Kickstarter and be out of money like that. Money does not go very far in that town. That's why so many productions moved out of it, because everything is bullshit, exploitative, and expensive. And we need something that maintains the core of the innocence of these things. There's this innocence to Rogue Trader. Just because there's this whole thing of, be strong, People complain both about the difficulty and then the overpowered aspect of certain things. And to me, that's the fun. And there are some very challenging choices in that game, because it's really not about, well, all the outcomes are awful. So, it's about what you can live with. And I actually learned something about my own decision-making playing that game. But the graphics are mid, they're not, and it's still glitchy, but it just feels like my inner 12 to 14-year-old idiot has a chance to go out and play. And yes, there's some very adult stuff in the game. I'm not calling it immature. I am super stoked for Owlcat's Expanse game. I will play their Dark Heresy game because I've, dabbled in that on tabletop too. That was actually the last tabletop thing I played as a player, was Dark Heresy 2. So there's a lot of potential there. But there has to be something for your inner 8 to 14-year-old in these things, or you're doing it wrong. And there's an innocence, and that doesn't mean there should be no sexual content in it whatsoever. But I am really struck by the fact that every single one of these popular games has to have some element of somebody gets beat up in bed with dubious consent. Some sort of, well, if you're really open-minded, you'll try polyamory with dubious consent and a certain amount of manipulation and coercion. And very little romance, because romance is vulnerable and kind of silly. And again, it's labeled as immature or unrealistic, and that's the whole goddamn point. You know, the cool thing about playing D&D is the silly hats and the GM acting things out, and, you know, your players do something that you completely did not see coming, and so you have to scramble, and that's when it's that's when it's collaborative, because the players recognize that you're scrambling. The worst thing to do is over-prepare as a GM. Do your basics and then wing it, because otherwise 80% of what you do will likely get thrown out. That's why that great, you know, moment in the D&D movie where there's this complicated like puzzle and one of the characters kind of shows up and like breaks the bridge or something like that, and it's like, yep, all that planning, right? If we can figure out a way to maintain that at scale, then awesome. But this needs to be kept for not the cool kids, not the hot people. And like, yes, the hot elf chick in a metal bikini, yes, that is a thing, but people misunderstand what that is, because the guys playing those games back in the day, they knew it wasn't real. They, you know, they didn't expect a woman like that to ever actually pay attention to them. It was a little bit tragic in its own way, but it's not evil or disrespecting women or anything like that. We've lost all that understanding because, you know, the cool kids with college degrees and hotness and agents and, you know, oh, they're actors, they're serious. That all got into it, and it just shoved all the people that built it aside. And there's always going to be people who are well known. And again, I said a bunch of guys playing D&D with their friends and they want to put it on YouTube. That still, to me, preserves the spirit of that. Because I mean, I've seen streams where shit happens and they're all just laughing, and explaining it wouldn't even make it that funny. It was just the moment that everybody got the giggles. That's what it's about, you know, not winning awards and being all glam, and there's no vulnerability there. That is all selling a product, and it is tearing people apart and tearing people down instead of bringing people together the way playing with, you know, 4 to 6 friends for a few hours on a Friday night does. And I mean, okay, make movies, adapt it, right? You know, making a Warhammer series is not the same as having people play Warhammer on stream and everybody's pretty and everybody's hot. And I mean, I've seen some things where it's actually like porn stars playing D&D, and that I actually liked, because it's clear what it is, right? There's more in common with porn, which is a stigmatized industry, right? And tabletop. Bringing that together creates an interesting synergy. Because, I mean, a lot of those, you know, porn stars, adult entertainers, hadn't played before. And they get right into it. Like, that's cool. But that's lateral, right? Stigmatized industry meets stigmatized hobby. Cool. Okay, there's cleavage. Awesome. Maybe there's some nudity. But that's not the same as mainstreaming it. And the minute there's this idea of, oh, it's the cool kids now, then you get people who, get some success or on one of the TV channels or one of the big streaming networks or whatever, getting raised because of a background in sex work or all that bullshit slut shaming that has nothing to do with business practices or treating people differently. And the fact that we are here now, the fact that we have this cool kid hierarchy, you're in, you're out, you're up, you're down, you're in with the cool kids or you're a loser and canceled. Everybody who played this shit was a loser and canceled back in the day. Holy fuck. We've completely lost the plot. And that's why I think that professional D&D was a mistake. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this content. I can't wait to see how people twist my words on this or personally attack me. Bring it, assholes. I have an opossum shirt.